without any further ado, the talk is about putting the we in Web3. We're going to be talking about community and the importance of community in all of Web3. So to get started, here's a bit about me. I got into the Web3 space in 2014. I've been building open source and developer communities for the better part of the last 12 years in both Web2 and Web3. I've worked on community strategy at Constellation and CoinList in the Web3 space, and numerous other companies in the Web2 and traditional, startup ecosystem. Currently, I'm leading the community team at the Near Foundation, and yeah, that's my Twitter handle. If you want to ask questions or reach out at any point. So here's a very high level and like bird's eye view of what we'll be covering today. We're going to be setting some context about Near and the ecosystem of communities that we're setting up at the Near Foundation, types of communities within the Web3 space in general, communities specifically within Near, and we'll also talk a little bit about community metrics and what's a vanity metric, what's useful metric, at least in the context of the work that we do at the Near Foundation. And then if we have some time towards the very end, we can also go through some Q&A. So to begin with, the what and why of Near, what are we doing at Near and why are we doing this, right? So here's our vision, right, which is a world where people control their data, asset, and power of governance. And that's our definition of an open world, right? An open web world. And so what does that concretely mean, given that, it's a high level vision? How does that translate into actual tangible stuff? We're building a next generation platform for decentralized applications. So how does that look like? What does that look like? We're building it to be very simple. So simple on both sides. Right? You have simplicity for developers to start building stuff and for users to start using applications. Right? We are building it in a very secure environment. So it's written in Rust, which means that it's more composable. I won't bore you with the technical details, but security is of paramount importance in this space, and so we're giving it full attention and importance. And lastly, is scalability, right? With all of you're hearing the narrative of the next billion people being onboarded to Web3, and you need the infrastructure that can support this massive influx of people that are coming in into the space. So you need to be having robust architecture that's infinitely scalable as more and more people come in into this environment, right? So that's a little bit of what we're building at Near. And in terms of if you have questions about, okay, that's cool, who are the people and projects that are building on Near, you can go to the link below, which is awesomenear.com, and you'll be able to find out very high level projects that are building really cool stuff on the Near ecosystem, from infrastructure projects to NFT and everything and all that's built on the Near ecosystem is something that you can find in that link. So I've mentioned that I work at the foundation, right? So you might have questions around, okay, well, what's the role of the Near Foundation in all of this, right? Our key tenets are three elements, right? One is raise awareness of Near, which means attract users, builders, creators, and community members into this cohort and group. Support projects that are building on Near, and support can be both in terms of like monetary support, in terms of grants, as well as the non-financial support like networking, mentorship, resource sharing, basically enabling them to succeed. And the last one is provide a clear and safe path to decentralization. So what does that specifically look like, right? And why is that important? You might have heard a lot about the regulatory challenges, given how new this technology is, right? And this is different in various parts of the world. So we're constantly talking to regulators and policymakers to ensure that they understand this. We're trying to educate them, as well as all the parties involved in terms of decentralization and what that really means. And the second element to this is governance. So ensuring that there are proper governance mechanisms set up for projects to eventually and progressively decentralize. is something that we also help with. And this is super important in a decentralized environment, just because we've seen projects that have not succeeded because they were, because of premature decentralization, right? They decentralized too quickly and too soon. Um, and we're always talking to a lot of projects and founders and figuring out how do you progressively decentralize. And this is also fairly common in the web 2 space, right? Where you would have, if you're, let's say, running an open source community, and you're talking about, or you're thinking about governance and what that looks like, you run into the classic problem of the hand raiser problem, right? The people that are raising their hands to get involved in, maintaining the repository or, leading this project might not necessarily have the required skills and knowledge to like fully, lead this project, right? So how do you set up the framework and structure in the beginning to then eventually decentralize is something that we are really excited about. So this is, for our friends in the community industry, I feel like this is a fairly familiar slide that's a little bit away from all of the jargons that I've talked about so far. On the top side, you will see the community, the different classifications, or the broadest classifications of communities, right? Of course, there are, multiple elements to this, but broadly, you could classify a community as, a community of interest or a community of practice or, a community of circumstance, right? The reason I mention this is because I guess to go one step back, in case, you're fairly new to the industry, an example of a community of interest would be, backpackers in Lisbon, right? That's where I'm calling in from. So I'm going to give you that example, right? So if you're a community of backpackers in Lisbon, you would, talk about backpacking and, destinations that you can go around, around Lisbon and the wider Portugal and whatnot. Community of practice is essentially people that are in the same sort of profession or same sort of craft. So let's say if you're an engineer or if you're a medical professional, right? You would have a community around you that you might be involved in within the same practice. And then finally, community of circumstance. As you all know, we're going through a pandemic. We're all in this shared experience, although the impact of this might be variable for a lot of people. We're all going through this shared experience collectively. Excuse me. So the reason I bring this up is because this is, if you look at the Web3 blockchain or crypto ecosystems, right? It's almost like an intersection of all these, these different types, right? And more concretely, we're all in this journey because we are interested or invested in crypto and Web3 technology. It's also a community of practice because you're, working, you're contributing, you're doing things in the industry. So you can almost fit that narrative of community of practice. And finally, when the markets go down or go up, what's called a bull market or bear market, you're in that shared experience together. So, which I thought was pretty fascinating. So here are different classifications or like different traits, I would say, of communities that we've seen. Project and ecosystem communities. So Near, for instance, is building an ecosystem. So we're trying to be the base layer on which people can build cool things, right? So the people who are building cool things on top of us will have their own communities around their own products and projects. And then you have regional community, which is we have communities in Lisbon, in India, in China, in Vietnam, so all around the world, right? Which is fairly common in the Web2 space as well. And then you have product communities, so people who are building, like I said, products specifically in terms of infrastructure products or public good products, could be having a community around themselves. You also have theme-based community. So let's say you're interested in NFTs or DAOs or social tokens, right? They have their own set of communities. Then there's decentralized autonomous organizations, which is nothing but a digital cooperative, right? That is on chain with your, decisions on voting power and governance, all of that available transparently, which is what blockchain enables, right? It's a transparency tool. And finally, you see this as a trait of a community, which is community mitosis. So when you have like one large community, almost like split to become multiple smaller communities that are a lot more focused when they started, um, bringing up. So, in terms of what the near community is, right? The way we view community is an ecosystem of communities. So, if you have a marketing background or a marketing adjacent background, this might be fairly familiar to you. But for those of you who are seeing this for the first time, this is how we essentially think about community. So you have the branded house model, which is, Google is a great example of that, right? With Google Maps and Google, Books and Google Groups and the Google products. And then you have house of brands. So P&G is a great example. You have Tide, Folger, Pampers, and a bunch of other brands that fall under P&G. And then you have Coca-Cola, right? Where Coca-Cola inherently has their own brand, but they also own a bunch of sub-brands, right? So how does that really translate into communities? Well, we at the Near Foundation, we have the Near community at the very top, and then we have our own sub community, which is the Near branded community, right? So this could be Near on Telegram, Near on Discord, all of the communities that we internally run and manage. And then we have a bunch of communities that we're empowering through funding, resource, mentorship, etc., that are doing their own thing, and supporting people. It seems like I'm breaking up a little bit. So
yes, there's a small technical interference. So Shreyas, we just need you to refresh the the interface and the club conference interface and rejoin while we wait for you.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry about the technical glitches, folks. What's a tech conference without a tech glitch? So yeah, as I was saying, this is truly the site that we're looking at in terms of communities and how we're viewing communities as an ecosystem of communities, right? So we are truly following a hybrid model where we, as the Near Foundation, will have our own Near core communities, but there will be independent guilds and affiliated communities that we are supporting and will continue to support. So more concretely, I've mentioned about Near guilds. What are guilds really, right? Near guilds are ecosystem development engines or vehicles that offer certain services or a suite of services to entities, projects, communities, or individuals in the Near ecosystem. So what would that look like? Let's say you are a founder and you have a great idea, but you don't really have the technical background and skills to start developing projects. Cool. You can go to the development guild and talk to them about your project and figure out ways to get them involved to build out an MVP of your product or project. You can go to the marketing guild and get their help to get your first 100 customers or first 100 community members or first 100 users. So there's a whole ecosystem that's created around this that enables each other and sort of wants to help each other, right? That's essentially what the structure of guilds are. There are a bunch of regional communities that also affiliate and call themselves a guild. So it's truly a combination of all of these different types of communities. Very quickly, just super high level details about the numbers. We've deployed this is a little outdated, but we've deployed way over $5 million in funding to guilds and decentralized autonomous organizations. We've done a lot of charity work and contributed to the war in Ukraine, people affected by the war in Ukraine through charity DAOs. We've also incubated 100 plus guilds and have around 200,000 plus members collectively across our ecosystem, and it's growing every single day. So, this is the existential question that community members, not only in Web3, but also Web2 ecosystem face every single day, right? How do we measure community health, community success? What do we even measure, right? Do you count engagement as a metric? Because people could be, complaining about you on Discord. Ideally, that would check your box, but is that really, moving the needle? So here's our framework in terms of measurement. So if you start from the left, you have the growth, engagement, and retention. Right. This is a classic Web2 model, from like product to funnels of like the product. Right. So you have users funneling into become adopters to eventually becoming contributors. So you have the classic cycle of growth, which is getting people into the system. You're trying to do something that causes them to engage, and then you want to keep them and not have them leave. The additional element here, so this part remains the same in Web3, right? It's the classic thing that would translate to Web3 communities as well. Um, Additionally, we have funding that we can deploy to community activation and campaigns and everything around that, right? Adoption. So it'll really like supercharge your growth and engagement side of things. So in terms of funding, we're really looking at the key caveat here is accountability and transparency of funding. So assuming that the funding that's deployed to these communities are done in an accountable manner, we can look at funding almost as a proxy to community growth and activity, right? The second element that we have that blockchain enables us to do is on-chain activity, right? Given that, I mean, the trade-off here is that people who are coming to this ecosystem are a little more tech savvy about privacy and security and anonymity. So you might not have their emails to do like drip campaigns and the classic model, but instead you have more data on things that they're actually doing in terms of interactions with their with the dApps, decentralized applications, and sort of behavior in terms of what applications are they trying to use and how they're sort of progressing. We also have had gills that have developed their own business models, and it would be lying if I would if I've told you that we had seen this coming. We honestly did not. When we started Guilds, the idea was just to get people together and form communities. Eventually, they figured out that by virtue of being there in that ecosystem and knowing the ecosystem inside out, they could figure out structures in place so that they could start earning money and charging people for their and finally, the most fascinating element, right? This is it's almost like you're playing 4D chess, because this hits you from the side, and you really can't do anything about it, which is market conditions, right? So let's say you're having a community, everything's going great, you're having people active, engaged, and it's almost growing day by day and thriving. And suddenly, because of market fluctuations and pricing and whatnot, your metrics of like daily active users and stuff like that just goes for a toss because you've suddenly entered what's considered a bear market, right? And people, given that there's also like people have like a financial stake in some of these things, it can cause a lot of anxiety, and people might not even want to like open any of the crypto projects or communities for a while, which is really, as a community builder and community manager, this is truly the thing that's beyond your control. So you can't really optimize or tweak for it. It's just take it as you go in terms of when it comes to the market. So this is how we truly look at community metrics broadly. Um, I know that the font is pretty small on this one, but I'll probably ask the organizers to like share the link to this once the slides are up. But just wanted to showcase the activation side specifically with the example of NFTs. And you could almost like translate this into social tokens and DAOs and a bunch of other verticals as well. So, but the key crux, if you want to take away one thing, it's how can you use Web3 technology for the first acquisition and engagement side of things, right? And what would that look like? And eventually decentralizing it through a DAO and structure that is truly community owned, right? So you're letting go of ownership at some stage and having this completely be run by the community. Um, so here are some tools that we've used historically, and we're in the process of evaluating. Right. So we have Discord, Telegram, Reddit, Discourse. These are also like now I think used by definitely used by the Web2 communities. Right. This is probably not new. We found sense of community index to be pretty fascinating. I mean, I'm a huge fan of that, and I feel like we can tweak that to get a pulse check and get like qualitative data from community members in terms of how they're doing really and how they're feeling about the community. We also have on-chain data, so there's a lot of data that we can get from on-chain activity that we also measure. DAOs again help us in terms of funding and how many people are getting involved in the day-to-day governance side of things, depending on what the purpose of the DAO are. We have something called Lunar Crush, which is really on the social media side of things. So they allow you to perform prepare charts with your competitors and also map it with like market sentiments and like market prices. So you could almost like overlay how people are active in your community and or your social audience and how that changes with the market sentiments. We're also talking to the folks at Helix Protocol, and they're basically building a protocol to incentivize people to answer questions and earn through that structure. So these are some of the high-level tools that we use pretty frequently from a community and social standpoint. But truly, right, apart from all of this, what truly excites me about this community is are the human stories, right? What is the impact that we're able to have with this almost like magic internet money, right? It truly blows my mind that we're able to have like real world impact with something that I got into the space in like 2014. I didn't even know this could become something that's actually if you would have told me back then that this could help people in Vietnam and India with relief during COVID pandemic and things like supporting people during an actual war in Ukraine, I would have laughed at you. And it's truly fascinating and blows my mind how much we're able to do when we collectively come together to do cool things. So these are some examples of the near community coming together, helping support the COVID relief projects in India, in Vietnam, and the Unchained Fund DAO to support people of Ukraine that were affected by the war in fundraising and supporting them on ground. So this is truly what I wanted to share with you guys today. But I truly want to ask everyone who has questions about Web3. If you're curious about Web3, please feel free to ask any of your questions and things that you might have on your mind, and we can definitely go through it.
Fantastic. Shreyas, that's been a wonderful presentation. Lots of really cool information over there, and definitely thank you for sharing. So apologies for the small technical glitch. Of course, we're in the information superhighway, as it used to be called. So these sort of breakages happen from time to time. So let's look at the audience questions. Please do fire away if you have any questions. So we have a question from Michelle. How do you track sentiment across all those platforms? Do you use a listening tool?
Yeah, so right now on the social media side, we're really using Lunar Crush as our tool to look at sentiments. Again, this is very tricky because none of these tools are really perfect. So, and then there's also like the regional and cultural connotations to this, right? Like for instance, AI and machine learning doesn't really understand sarcasm. So you might be extremely sarcastic and, being passive aggressive. And it sort of like toys around with your sentiment score, right? So we're not really deeply looking at sentiment analysis as a really powerful metric, at least at this point. But yeah, we're definitely, I think the best sentiment analysis score that we're doing are at conferences, in-person events, and really asking the community how they're feeling, right? So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Michelle, but that's how we're approaching it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that answer. I'm just looking at the chat, and everybody's, thanking for the wonderful session, which I am as well. I'm just adding my voice to them. Marty's asked earlier in the session, can we get access to the slides or maybe the information that you would like to share, the bulk of it, to for their reference?
Yeah, I'm happy to share the slides with all of the hyperlinks so that they can definitely go through it. And as I said, my Twitter handle is on there. If anyone wants to chat about this and ask any questions at all, feel free to reach out. Happy to onboard you into Web3 and also open to skeptics' point of view, because I sort of toy around both sides. I've heard enough skepticism about this space that I have my mind open to engage with anyone and everyone. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'll make all of this available so that you have access to this.
Fantastic. It is here to stay, certainly. And it's always good to, get some knowledge around it, and for us, for the community professionals. So Shreyas, that's been a wonderful session. Just before we went, we have a few minutes. Maybe would you be kind enough to answer another question?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's go.
cool.
Let's do it.
Fantastic. So Houston, thanks for just jumping in with the question. I missed the early portion of your presentation. Can you share how you handle rewarding community contributors?
Yeah. So rewarding is the most interesting part of all of this, right? And the way that we're sort of doing this is by delegating this, acknowledging the fact that we don't fully understand all of this, right? We're trying to figure out and say that, okay, we'll support big verticals. So we have the marketing DAO, creatives DAO, developer DAO, all of that, which are specific to certain verticals. And you have people that are on the councils of this, and the councils of this are community members, right? So it's not us at the foundation; it's entirely decentralized, and people from the community who have experience in terms of marketing or creative activations that are on the councils. And you then submit your proposal. Let's say you want to do something in your city, or you want to do something online. You would submit a proposal to whatever category it fits in. If it's marketing activation, you would submit to the marketing team, and that they would evaluate it. They will tell you, how do you tweak your proposal, get it funded, and then ultimately there's an accountability process as well. So once you do your event, go back and tell how that went, write the report, all of that stuff. So we're trying to really delegate as much as possible to the community and say that, okay, there will be things that we're not experts of, and we're totally trusting the community to come together and help people out. And if there are proposals that come in that doesn't really fit in with any of these narratives, we sort of try and figure out who's the best person that we can reach out to that is knowledgeable about that specific proposal, and get them to review it and support them.
Fantastic. Thanks for that answer. So that's been really, really cool. So Shreyas, thanks for joining. Thank you for sharing all the valuable information that you have shared. And, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor to have you with us today, and certainly a part of the virtual stage of CMX Summit Thrive 2022 Day 2. So thanks again for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.